The Olympic National Park sprawled beyond the windows of my ranger station, a vast tapestry of Douglas firs, western hemlocks, and Sitka spruces woven into the morning fog. The mist curled around their gnarled branches, softening the jagged silhouettes, as if the forest were exhaling a secret it had guarded for millennia. I, Thomas Wheeler, stood at my desk in the Elwha Valley outpost, my fingers tracing the worn grain of the cedar wood, its surface etched with 10 years of coffee rings and map creases. The view stirred something primal, a reverence for the wilderness's beauty, laced with an unease I could never name, like standing at the edge of a chasm that whispered your name. The station was a utilitarian relic, its cedar-paneled walls adorned with faded topographic maps, safety posters curling at the edges, and a corkboard cluttered with patrol schedules. The air carried the scent of damp earth and pine, tracked in on my boots from countless trails, mingling with the faint metallic tang of the station's ancient heater. A radio on the shelf crackled with routine check-ins, the voices of other rangers cutting through the static like beacons in the void. I responded mechanically, confirming my position, but my mind drifted, snagged on a memory that refused to fade. My brother, Michael, for years my senior, whose absence had haunted me for 7 months. Michael was the architect of my life here. He taught me the forest's language, how to read the angle of deer tracks in soft mud, to find water in a parched ravine, to listen when the wilderness fell silent. The forest knows more than we'll ever learn, he'd say, his pack slung over one shoulder, his eyes alight with the promise of adventure. While other kids lost themselves in pixelated worlds, we tracked elk through meadows, built shelters from fallen branches, and memorized the bitter tang of edible plants. My fingers brushed the small wooden eagle carving on my desk, a talisman Michael had whittled during a 2-week survival exercise, its wings smoothed by firelight. "Something to watch over you when I can't," he'd said, pressing it into my palm, his voice steady, his gaze warm with a brother's unspoken vow. The memory tightened my throat, a wound that bled into every quiet moment. Our parents' death had forged our bond into something unbreakable. I was 19, a community college student still living in their house, when a storm sent their car off a mountain road. The police report cited brake failure, a mechanical failure too tidy for the grief it left behind. The details never mattered. The loss did. Michael, 23 and already in the military, returned home, his presence a lifeline. One night, a month after the funeral, we sat on the back porch, passing a bottle of Dad's whiskey, the amber liquid catching the moonlight. "What do you want to do now, Tom?" he asked, his voice cutting through the fog of my despair. I had no answer, but Michael's quiet strength, his insistence on weekend hikes, his willingness to sit in silence when words failed, gave me space to breathe. The forest absorbed our grief, its vastness a sanctuary when the house felt like a tomb. By the time he returned to duty, I'd chosen my path, park ranger. Michael nodded, his eyes glinting with a knowing pride, as if he'd always seen me among the trees. Michael's military life was a locked vault, its contents glimpsed only in fragments. Special forces, wilderness survival, rescue operations. His work was classified, communicated through brief emails from untraceable servers. Months would pass with only a line or two. "Doing fine, Tom. Stay sharp." Then he'd appear at my cabin unannounced, his face lined beyond his years, his eyes carrying a weight I couldn't decipher. He'd drop his pack, crack a beer, and we'd talk about the park, the trails, anything but his missions. Yet his silences spoke louder than his words, hinting at places where the world's rules bent, where survival demanded more than skill. The last time I saw him was 3 years ago, during a rare 3-week leave. We planned a hike through the park's remotest section, a labyrinth of rainforests, valleys, and coastline where trails dissolved into wilderness. Michael was different then, his shoulders taut, his gaze flicking to the shadows as if expecting an ambush. 5 days in, we camped by a small lake, its surface a mirror for the stars, the air sharp with pine and wood smoke. Michael was quiet all day, his usual banter replaced by a pensive stillness. As the fire crackled, he spoke, his voice low, deliberate. "Ever think about how much of the world's unmapped, Tom? Not just land, but something else. I poked the fire, sparks spiraling into the night. What do you mean? His eyes fixed on the flames, unblinking. Places where the rules don't hold. Corners of the wilderness locals avoid, where people have vanished for centuries. I laughed, attributing his intensity to military stress or too many late-night debriefs. Sounds like you've been swapping ghost stories around campfires. He didn't smile, just sipped from his canteen, his gaze sweeping the darkness beyond our fire. You ever notice anything strange here? Places animals won't go? Patterns in the wildlife? I brushed it off, citing the park's well-documented ecology. But his questions lingered, seeds planted in fertile doubt. For the rest of the trip, I caught him glancing behind us, his hand resting near his knife, as if the forest were a predator lying in wait. Just habit, he said when I asked, but his eyes betrayed a vigilance I hadn't seen before. Now, standing in my station, that memory felt like a cipher, a warning I'd failed to decode. The park was vast. 1,400 square miles of rainforest, meadows, and rugged coast. A place where getting lost was easy, disappearing easier. Michael knew its contours as well as I did, his knowledge honed by years of survival training. If he wanted to vanish, he'd know where to go, which valleys swallowed trails, which caves hid from satellites. The thought chilled me, my fingers tightening around the eagle carving, its edges worn smooth by years of touch. Michael wasn't just a hiker. He was special forces, trained to endure where others faltered. What could make someone like him disappear? The phone rang at 6:17 a.m. on a Tuesday, shattering the station's quiet. I grabbed it, expecting a routine update from the night ranger. "Wheeler," I said, stifling a yawn. "Tom, it's Pete Gallagher from Dispatch. We've got a situation." His voice was measured, the tone reserved for bad news. Michael missed his scheduled check-in last night. His hiking permit had him exiting the Keno Valley Trail by sunset. My heart lurched, the world narrowing to that single sentence. Michael never missed check-ins. It was our cardinal rule, drilled into us since childhood. "Last confirmed location?" I asked, already lacing my boots. The phone cradled against my shoulder. 3 days ago, Upper Quinn Ranger Station. Signed the log, heading to explore Queet's tributaries. 4-day trip. I yanked the park map from the wall, my finger tracing the Queet's watershed. A remote, dense expanse of old-growth forest, barely threaded by trails. "I'm heading out. Get a helicopter and call Aaron Lewis at County Search and Rescue." "Already notified," Pete said, his voice softening. "Tom, he's probably fine, just lost track of time." We both knew better. Michael didn't lose track of time. I drove to Upper Quinn, the forest blurring past my truck's windows, the eagle carving heavy in my pocket. By noon, 23 searchers converged at the station, the logbook open to Michael's entry. M. Wheeler, solo hike, Queet's tributaries, 4 days. His handwriting was precise, no hidden messages, no clues. I spread his intended route across my truck's hood, briefing the team under a sky heavy with clouds. He's military, a survival specialist. Standard protocols won't cut it. He planned to follow this tributary to the headwaters, cross this ridge, explore the next valley. Aaron Lewis, a grizzled 52-year-old with decades of search and rescue experience, nodded. 5 teams, hourly radio checks, helicopters on standby. We covered 15 miles that first day, our voices hoarse from calling Michael's name through the dense undergrowth. Thermal imagers swept the canopy, binoculars scanned ridgelines, tracking gear combed the soil. Nothing. No boot prints, no broken branches, no discarded gear. The forest seemed to mock us, its silence swallowing our shouts. Night fell, and I lay awake in camp, stars piercing the canopy like cold, unblinking eyes. Michael had taught me constellations as a kid. Find Polaris, you'll find North. Now, those stars felt indifferent, their light a reminder of how small we were against the wilderness's vastness. Day 2 brought helicopters, their heat cameras sweeping the valleys in precise grids. We pushed deeper, navigating root-choked trails and swollen streams, our boots sinking into mud that seemed to cling with intent. By day 4, our team swelled to 45, word spreading to rangers in neighboring parks. 4 of Michael's military friends arrived, moving with his same coiled alertness. "We worked with Mike," said Grant, the oldest, his face weathered, his eyes sharp. "Heard he went missing in your backyard." Their presence was a lifeline, their methods hinting at technology or techniques beyond standard rescue. Devices that hummed faintly, glances that carried unspoken plans. A week into the search, we'd scoured Michael's planned route and 5 miles in every direction. The absence of evidence was its own message. People don't vanish without a trace, I told the team, their faces etched with exhaustion after pausing their lives to search. Grant requested satellite imagery from the days Michael hiked, and 2 days later we gathered around a laptop. The images revealed a dark spot in a clearing 3 miles off-route, possibly a tent or tarp. "This was taken the day before his exit," Grant said, pointing. We reached the clearing, but the ground was pristine. No campsite, no sign of disturbance. Grant crouched, sifting pine needles. "Ground's been disturbed recently." 10 minutes later, we found a single boot print, Michael's tread, preserved in mud near a stream, pointing toward the water, then vanishing as if he'd stepped into the air. The discovery galvanized us. We expanded outward, bringing in state police tracking dogs. The dogs caught a scent, followed it yards, then stopped, confused, as if the trail dissolved. After 2 weeks, the sheriff pulled me aside, his face heavy with regret. "Thomas, we need to scale back. Resources are finite, and 2 weeks is longer than most operations." "He's out there," I snapped, my voice raw. Michael wouldn't give up on me. He placed a hand on my shoulder. "We'll keep a small team, focus on targeted areas." By week 4, the official search ended, leaving only core rangers and Michael's friends. Grant found me by the campfire one night, his shadow long against the trees. "Official search is done tomorrow. Mike was the best. If he didn't want to be found, we wouldn't find him." "You think he vanished on purpose?" I asked, the question bitter on my tongue. Grant stood, silent. "We're staying a few more days unofficial." They left after 6 weeks, and I took leave, splitting my life. 4 days on duty, 3 searching. Spring turned to summer. Rivers swelled with snowmelt. Lightning sparked fires across the park. I rushed to each blaze, hoping Michael would emerge, drawn by the chaos. Nothing. The forest offered no clues, its silence a wall. I began researching park disappearances, poring over archives in the station's back room. Boxes of yellowed reports, some dating to the 1800s. A pattern emerged. Experienced hikers vanishing in remote areas, minimal clues, searches abandoned after weeks. A 1912 report mentioned a timber survey team hearing voices of deceased kin from the forest floor, abandoning their work. A 1943 ranger noted hikers avoiding the Queets Valley, claiming the woods spoke with dead voices. The similarities chilled me, a thread of wrongness weaving through decades. 7 months later, March's storms battered my cabin, rain hammering the windows like a pulse. I sat at my desk, the glow of my laptop casting shadows across the room. When an email arrived, its subject line a knife to the heart. "I'm alive." From Michael Wheeler, securemailbox.net. Date: March 15th, 9:46 p.m. The words seared into my mind. "I'm alive, but I'm trapped. There's a hole in the forest, Thomas. Not natural. Can't get out. 47 degree 51, 19.4 inch N. 124 degree 0, 328.2 W. Come alone. Trust no one. Not rangers, not police, not my military contacts. They wouldn't understand. Emmy, 7 months." My hands shook as I typed a reply, begging for details. Where he'd been, if he was hurt, but no response came. I traced the email's path through servers in Japan, Germany, Canada, a labyrinth of encryption Michael's skills could craft. The coordinates pointed to a remote section, 30 miles northwest of our search, a maze of caves, valleys, and old-growth forest. No ranger log or geological survey mentioned a hole. I called Pete at dispatch, my voice tight. Need to know if Michael's accounts have been active. It's midnight, Tom, he said, concern creeping into his tone. Tonight, Pete, please. 40 minutes later, he called back. Michael's accounts, bank, social media, dormant since he vanished. That email server's been active, receiving but not sending, until tonight. Someone had been checking it silently for months. I packed with precision, Michael's lessons guiding my hands. Warm layers, waterproof jacket, extra socks, gloves, hat. My Winchester rifle, cleaned and checked, joined a hunting knife, multi-tool, headlamp with spare batteries, fire starter, maps, compass, and 200 feet of climbing rope. Survival gear followed, 3 days of high-calorie food, water purification tablets, first aid kit with antibiotics, emergency blanket. My satellite phone and Ranger radio, though unreliable in deep valleys, went in last. The eagle carving found its place in my jacket pocket, a tether to Michael. I wrote a note to my supervisor. Personal time, family situation, unreachable 3 to 5 days. The storm eased as dawn broke, the forecast promising 3 stable days. I locked my cabin, the forest's damp sent sharp in my lungs, and drove to the Elwha River trailhead. The coordinates a beacon in the wilderness. The Elwha River Trail vanished 15 miles in, giving way to moss-covered ground untouched by human steps. My GPS showed 19 miles to the coordinates. The forest a gray labyrinth of fog and ancient trees, their branches clawing the sky. My pack bit into my shoulders, heavy with rescue gear, its weight a reminder of the stakes. I'm coming, Michael, I whispered, the words swallowed by a silence that felt alive, watchful. A ravine blocked my path, 30 feet deep, its creek swollen by March rains into a torrent. I hiked upstream, finding a fallen cedar, its trunk slick with moss but stable. I crossed carefully, Michael's voice in my head. 3 points of contact, Thomas. Hands and feet together keep you alive. The terrain grew brutal, steep climbs through root-choked soil, dense thickets that snagged my pack, my thighs burning with each step. The forest's silence deepened. No birdsong, no squirrels, only the crunch of my boots and the rasp of my breath. I camped under a rocky overhang, avoiding a fire to heed Michael's warning. Trust no one. The stars pierced the canopy, cold and distant. As I lay in my sleeping bag, rifle close, listening to a quiet that pressed against my eardrums. Morning brought light rain, the GPS showing 12 miles left. The trees grew older, their trunks massive, the undergrowth sparse, as if the ground rejected life. Birdsong vanished, replaced by a heavy stillness that seemed to hum beneath the surface. By afternoon, I found stone circles, 6 feet wide, their surfaces clean, recently placed, unlike the weathered petroglyphs of local tribes. They formed a rough arc, each stone unmarred by lichen, as if set days ago. I photographed them, unease crawling up my spine, and marked their location on my GPS. The forest changed as I climbed higher, the trees towering, their branches so dense the light barely reached the ground. Nothing felt familiar, despite my decade in the park. The GPS beeped, 500 yards. The air grew thick, my neck prickling with the instinct of prey sensing a predator. The forest opened into a clearing, 50 yards across, unnaturally perfect, its edges lined with evenly spaced trees, as if carved by an unseen hand. At the clearing's center stood a lightning-struck Douglas fir, its trunk wider than my truck, its upper third shattered, blackened by a recent strike. The coordinates pointed to it. The ground was spongy, covered in dark moss unlike any native species, its texture oily, repellent. Behind the tree, hidden by splintered branches, was a hole 6 feet wide, its edges razor clean, a perfect circle of absolute darkness that seemed to pulse with absence. I crouched at the hole's edge, heart pounding, the air around it colder, denser, as if it exhaled a chill from another world. No dirt piles surrounded it, no signs of erosion or excavation, just a void that defied geology. I dropped a stone, No sound returned, not even a faint echo. My flashlight, a heavy-duty model with a beam that could pierce fog, cast its light downward, only to vanish feet below, absorbed by the blackness as if light itself were forbidden. I tied paracord to a nearby tree, lowering a backup flashlight. At 100 feet, the cord went slack, its ends sliced clean, as if by a blade sharper than steel. "What the hell did you find, Michael?" I whispered, my voice flat in the clearing's strange acoustics. I camped 50 yards away, stringing my hammock between two hemlocks, preferring elevation to a ground-tense vulnerability. My rifle rested against my pack, its weight a cold comfort. The clearing glowed faintly under a quarter moon, the hole a darker wound in the earth, its edges seeming to shimmer, though my eyes couldn't confirm it. The forest's silence was oppressive. No owls hooting, no rodents scurrying, only the thud of my pulse. I ate cold rations, avoiding a fire, Michael's warning, "Trust no one," echoing in my mind. Sleep came in fragments, each twig snap jerking me awake. My hand on the rifle, Michael's old advice ringing. Sleep light, wake ready. At midnight, a voice shattered the silence. "Thomas." Faint, weak, unmistakable, Michael's. "Help me." I grabbed my flashlight, heart racing, and approached the clearing, keeping 10 feet from the hole's edge, mindful of the paracord's fate. "Michael, is that you?" "Yes, I'm trapped. So weak. Please help." The voice was strained, distant, as if filtered through layers of earth. "How deep are you? Are you hurt?" "Don't know how deep. Been here so long. Losing track of time." I offered 200 feet of climbing rope, but his responses were vague. "Distances don't work right down here." He spoke of being pulled in, of they returning at dawn. "What's down there?" I pressed, my voice steady despite the fear coiling in my gut. "Too dangerous to talk. They might hear." His urgency grew, but something felt off. Michael was meticulous, a planner who weighed every risk. This voice, while his in tone, lacked his clarity, his caution. I tested him. "When we were kids, what did you carve for me the summer before I became a ranger?" "A bird. An eagle. You still have it, don't you?" The answer was correct, yet my unease deepened, a gut instinct honed by years in the wilderness. I fed the rope into the hole, watching it slide into the darkness, foot by foot. At 150 feet, it grew taut as if seized. "I've got it," the voice said, stronger, but still distant. The rope tightened unnaturally, no climbing rhythm, just a relentless downward pull, as if the hole itself were hungry. I released it, stepping back as the rope vanished, the tied end snapping against the tree with a crack that echoed like a gunshot. Silence returned, colder, heavier, the clearing's air seeming to thicken. "I know you're not my brother," I called, my voice firm despite the tremor in my hands. The voice laughed, Michael's tone twisting into something ancient, wet, like stones grinding in a riverbed. "Your brother is dead. He died screaming." The laughter grew, echoing from all directions, no longer human, its cadence a mockery of life. The laughter swelled, splintering into wet, clicking noises no throat could produce. "Soon I'll wear your skin," it taunted, the words slithering through the air. I braced my rifle against a tree trunk, its stock cold against my shoulder, and aimed at the hole's center, though I doubted bullets could harm whatever lurked below. "What are you?" I demanded, my voice steady despite the fear clawing my spine. "We've been here longer than your kind walked upright. Your brother knew too much, just like your parents." My blood froze, the mention of my parents a violation. "What do you know about my parents?" The voice shifted, seamless and horrifying, becoming my mother's, warm, perfect, the slight lift at the end of her sentences exact. "Tommy, sweetie, be careful. You shouldn't be out here alone." Then my father's, deep, steady, the tone he used when teaching me to shoot. "Son, put down the gun. That's not how I raised you." The voices merged, a chorus of my family, Mom, Dad, Michael, speaking in unison. "We've been waiting for you, Thomas, the last wheeler. Come closer. Join us." Black tendrils oozed from cracks around the hole, defying gravity, reaching 2 feet upward before collapsing, like ink moving against the air's will. The ground cracked, spiderweb fissures spreading through the moss, the tendrils bubbling, retreating, only to rise again. I backed away, grabbing my pack, my hand finding the dynamite, 3 sticks, a ranger's tool for clearing rock slides, its fuse a coiled promise. "I can be him for you," Michael's voice said, alone again, soft, seductive. "I can be your brother, better than he was. I know what you need." "You're not my brother," I said, striking a match, its flame frail in the dark. The voices fell silent, the air tensing, as if the forest itself held its breath. "You can't stop this." The thing snarled, its voice now a tectonic grind, devoid of humanity. "We are eternal. We are patient. Your family has delayed the inevitable for generations, but it changes nothing." I lit the fuse, sparks hissing. "Let's test that theory." I threw the dynamite, the bundle arcing like a comet, its fuse sparking as it plunged into the hole's darkness. I dove behind a tree, covering my head. The explosion was a cataclysm, a rolling wave of force that shook the earth, trees swaying, branches snapping. Beneath the blast, a scream erupted. Not human, but something older, vast, like metal tearing or stone fracturing. Debris rained. Rocks, dirt, splintered wood, pelting the forest for minutes. When it stopped, I raised my head. The clearing had collapsed, the hole now a 15-foot crater of jagged earth and broken trees. Dust hung in the moonlight, filtering through a new gap in the canopy. I circled the crater, flashlight revealing normal shadows, no unnatural darkness. The forest was silent, a stunned quiet, not the predatory stillness of before. Yet the trees seemed to watch, their branches clawing the sky, their presence a lingering threat. I packed and fled, half running through the night, compass in one hand, flashlight in the other. My boots gripped roots and rocks, my lungs burning as I pushed harder than I should. Every few minutes, I glanced behind, expecting tendrils or voices, but saw only darkness. Dawn broke as I reached a familiar ridge, the ranger station a distant smudge in the valley. I stumbled inside, locking the door, collapsing into my desk chair. The station's familiarity. Maps pinned to the walls, the radio's faint hum, the coffee maker's stale scent, felt alien, as if I'd returned to a stranger's life. The eagle carving, still in my pocket, was my only anchor to the man I'd been. For 3 days, I was a specter in my own life, moving through ranger duties on autopilot, barely eating, sleeping in fragments haunted by the voices. My colleagues noticed, Pete's worried glances, my supervisor's gentle prodding, but I deflected, unable to articulate the impossible. I scoured the station's archives, boxes of paper files in the back room, some crumbling from age. An 1887 report described a hiker hearing his brother's voice calling from multiple directions, vanishing near the Queets Valley. A 1912 timber survey team abandoned their work after hearing deceased kin from the forest floor, blaming sinkholes. A 1943 ranger noted hikers avoiding the northeastern Queets, claiming the woods spoke with dead voices. His request to close trails denied for lack of evidence. I plotted the locations on a map, a 12-mile circle with the crater at its center, a pattern unseen by generations of rangers. On the 4th day, a knock jolted me, 3 sharp raps on my cabin door, precise, deliberate. I froze, dishwater running over my hands, the kitchen clock ticking 8:37 p.m. No one visited this late. Rangers respected my privacy, and hikers had no business on service roads after dark. The knock came again, identical. I dried my hands, grabbing my hunting knife from the counter, my rifle too far in the bedroom. Through the door's window, a tall figure stood on the porch, face shadowed. "Who is it?" I called, knife low against my leg. "Thomas." A voice rasped, weak but unmistakable. "It's me." I yanked the door open. Michael stood swaying, barely upright, his frame emaciated, clothes torn, hanging off bones sharp beneath his skin. His face was sunken, cheekbones jutting. A jagged scar running from temple to jaw, red and raw. His eyes, though hollow, locked onto mine with recognition. "Michael?" I whispered, the knife clattering to the floor as I caught him, his legs buckling. He weighed nothing, his ribs stark under my hands as I helped him inside, kicking the door shut. "You're alive," I said, my voice breaking. "How?" "Water," he rasped, lips cracked. I settled him on the couch, fetching a glass, helping him sip when his hands shook too violently to hold it. Strange circular bruises marked his arms and neck, some fresh, others yellowing, like suction marks. The scar on his face glistened, untreated, a wound from another world. "What happened? How did you escape?" He raised a trembling hand, silencing me. "Food, please." I brought the rest of a beef stew, still warm, and he ate mechanically without pleasure, as if relearning the act. I sat across from him, hands clasped to still their shaking. My brother was alive, solid, real, after 7 months of grief and doubt. When he finished, he set the bowl aside, his eyes clearer, more focused. "You found it," he said, not a question. I nodded. "3 days ago. I heard voices, yours, Mom, Dad. I almost went in, but I used dynamite, collapsed the opening." A faint smile crossed his face, the first I'd seen. "Smart. That's what saved me." His story spilled out, fragmented, his voice raspy but gaining strength. He'd been investigating disappearances linked to ancient entities in wildernesses worldwide. Forests, mountains, deserts, places locals shunned, where people vanished without trace. "Military service takes you to strange places," he said, sipping water. "Locals tell stories about areas they won't enter, about voices calling their names. I noticed patterns, different continents, cultures, but the same tales. Holes that shouldn't exist, people disappearing." He tried to warn me 3 years ago, by that lake, asking about unmapped places, but I dismissed him. When I went missing, I was following a lead, a 1920s research team that vanished here, except one survivor, our great-grandfather, William Wheeler. I leaned forward, the archives flashing in my mind. "The expedition where everyone died in a landslide?" Michael shook his head. "That was the cover story. William found one of these entities, made a pact to survive. It's been hunting our family ever since. The entity, he explained, was ancient, feeding not on flesh but on memories, emotions, connections, using them to perfect its mimicry. It lured victims with voices of loved ones, harvested from prior prey. The whole led to a cave system, miles of tunnels where Michael was kept alive in a chamber with others. Hikers, researchers, all trapped, their minds probed. They didn't last as long as I did, he said, eyes distant. It fed slower on me, maybe because of our family's connection. The dynamite's explosion disrupted the entity, collapsing a tunnel, revealing an escape route. He ran for days, emerging miles away, and struggled to reach me. It knew our parents, he said, his voice dropping. Their accident wasn't break failure. They uncovered our family's link to these things, tried to protect us by moving away, but it found them. I stood, pacing, the police report's tidy explanation unraveling. How does it feed? Michael touched the bruises on his neck. Feelers like tendrils attach here. They pull memories, recent ones first, then deeper childhood loved ones. It uses them to build traps, to sound like mom, dad, me. I felt sick, the voice's perfection. Mom's warmth, dad's cadence. Now a violation. We need to report this, I said. Park Service, military. No, he snapped, fear sharpening his voice. Authorities are compromised. These entities have human allies, people in power who keep them hidden for knowledge, protection, or worse. I stared at him, the practical brother I knew now, speaking of conspiracies. Why no one connects the disappearances? He said, sensing my doubt. Why some areas stay unmapped despite satellites? They've fed on humans for centuries, and their allies bury the evidence. I draped a blanket over him, his shivers persistent despite the cabin's warmth. "You need a doctor." "Not yet," he said, gripping my arm. "Promise you won't tell anyone I'm here. Not your supervisor, not rangers, no one." I nodded, reluctant but trusting. "Get some sleep. We'll figure it out tomorrow." I helped him lie on the couch, his breathing evening out, though his face remained tense, even in sleep. I stood at the window, the forest, a dark sea beyond the glass. Somewhere out there, the entity waited, its hunger unslaked, its allies unseen. Michael's sleep was restless, punctuated by jerks and mumbled words. At 3 a.m. he woke, his voice stronger, eyes darting to the windows. "They're everywhere, Tom, forests, caves, deserts. Dozens, maybe hundreds. They feed on connections, not just memories. That's why it kept me alive. Our family's pact makes us valuable." He spoke of our great-grandfather's journals, hidden somewhere, and a network of researchers fighting the entities, their work silenced by those in power. By 6:30 a.m., as dawn's light filtered through the pines, Michael fell into a deeper sleep. I stepped to the kitchen for water, the taps knocking familiar, air in the pipes. I filled 2 glasses and returned. The couch was empty, blankets heaped, Michael gone. I checked the bathroom, my bedroom, nothing. "Michael!" I called, the silence crawling under my skin. The front door was locked from the inside. On the porch, the forest was quiet, birdsong distant. Back inside, a folded paper sat on the coffee table, unnoticed before. In Michael's neat script, it read, "You need to leave now. The explosion didn't kill it. Nothing can. It's recovering and will come for you. Our parents discovered the truth and tried to protect us, but it found them. Trust nothing in this forest. Your memories have been manipulated. We were brought here as part of a larger plan. I've gone to find answers and end this. Don't follow me. One of us needs to survive." I read it 3 times, my hands shaking. Manipulated memories? A larger plan? How had Michael, too weak to stand, vanished without a trace? I froze, a prickle at my neck, and glanced at the window. Nothing but trees and morning light, yet the birds had stopped singing. Instinct took over, Michael's lesson surging. When in doubt, move. I grabbed a duffel bag, throwing in clothes, emergency cash, my passport, the eagle carving. My ranger uniform hung on the bedroom door, a symbol of a decade's service. I left it, the life it represented now a lie. I tossed the bag into my truck, the cabin. My home for 10 years. Looking wrong, its familiarity tainted. My phone buzzed as I started the engine. Pete's voice. "Thomas, where are you?" "North Trail inspections today." Michael's warning echoed, "Trust nothing." "I can't explain, Pete. I'm sorry." I ended the call, turned off the phone, and pulled onto the service road. The forest crowded close, its trees seeming to lean inward, their branches clawing the sky. 5 miles to the highway, each turn revealing more woods, more silence. At 1 mile, I checked my rearview mirror and froze. Michael stood among the trees, watching, his scar glinting. I blinked, and he was gone, only pines remaining. I floored the gas, the truck lurching over ruts, the highway appearing like salvation. I turned east, away from Olympic National Park, away from my career, away from the brother I'd found and lost in 12 hours. I didn't know where I was going, only that Michael was right. One of us had to survive. The forest receded in my mirror, but its presence lingered, a weight on my soul. The entity endures, a predator older than humanity, its holes hidden in unmapped wildernesses across the globe. Was Michael its victim, its lure, or part of a design woven through our bloodline? The truth lies in the forest's silence, in the journals our great-grandfather hid, in the voices that call from the dark. I drive on, the eagle carving in my pocket, the only piece of my past I trust. The world feels larger now, its edges frayed, its shadows alive.